Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are joining us from. Welcome to our very first webinar of the year. I'm Betty Akest, and I'm happy and excited to be here with you once again because we are kicking off 2025 with a topic that couldn't be more relevant: cyber security outlook for 2025. Now, let's take a moment and think about this. In just last year alone, cyber threats have evolved at an unprecedented rate. We've had AI-driven attacks, sophisticated phishing schemes, deepfake scams making headlines, reminding us that digital security is no longer just an IT issue. It's a business, it's more financial, and even a personal survival issue. So what does 2025 have in store for all of us? Will our defenses catch up, or will criminals stay one step ahead? And most importantly, what can businesses and individuals do to stay secure in this ever-changing digital landscape? So that's exactly what we are here to explore today. We've brought together industry experts who are at the forefront of cybersecurity, tackling the real-world challenges. They'll be sharing key insights, predictions, and some strategies to help us all stay ahead. But before we begin, okay, as always, this session is being recorded and will be available on our social media handles for future reference. Okay? So don't forget to like and subscribe. You find them on our screens right now. Okay. All right. So I think I can go straight to it, right? I would like to introduce our esteemed speakers for today. I will start with Richard Kwame Asumeni. So Richard is a technology professional with over 20 years of experience. That's very rich experience in system integration, networking, satellite communications, wireless engineering, IT projects, and information security. He holds an MBA from Accra Business School and a BSc in IT security from MSc University Zurich, Switzerland. Additionally, Richard is certified as an ethical hacker from Point Solution Training Center in India. I hope I mentioned that right. A certified network security specialist by the International Cyber Security Institute in UK. I'll just end here. His credentials are really long. I tried very hard to summarize it here right now. So Richard, welcome to today's discussion.
Thank you, Betty. Thank you.
Happy to have you here.
Same here.
Okay. Our next guest speaker is by the name Kojo Nubenu. Kojo has wide-ranging experience in information security management, enterprise risk management, project management, cybersecurity governance, data privacy, business analytics, and business continuity management. I also tried very hard to summarize the credentials because it wouldn't have fit into the screen. Kojo, you are welcome. Good to have you here.
Thank you, Betty.
Okay, and thank you all for joining us today. We are here, and we believe that you would learn a lot from today's webinar. Okay, so I will zoom in right away because I'm curious what they have for us today. Okay, I have some few questions I would like to share with you. Okay. All right, so my first question, and I've been pondering over this, right? As cybersecurity evolves, so do the threats we face. With new technologies emerging, the risk landscape is constantly shifting. So as we prepare for 2025, I would like to ask our experts today, what are the most significant shifts in the cyber threat landscape? What is it anticipated for? in 2025? I think I'll start with Kwame at this point. Kwame, you can take this question first. Hello, Kwame. Kindly unmute. Okay, great.
Hi, thank you, Betty. So as you rightly said from the beginning, if you look at the past year and the years gone by, cybersecurity has become a very serious situation, serious in all the things we do. And the reason is that we are living in the digital world where everything about us is connected. Now, to answer your question, I just want to make a reference to the World Economic Forum Global Cybersecurity Outlook Report for 2025, which was released just a few weeks ago. If you look at the report, it highlighted on critical challenges ahead of us. I mean, the increased complexity in the cybersecurity landscape. And this complexity, it cuts across organizations and nations. You know, there's a saying that before the Russia-Ukraine war, there was a cyber war before it escalated to the physical, war. So we're looking at the rapid growth, of emerging technologies, the geopolitical, the vulnerability in the supply chain, the dependencies, and above all, the growing cybersecurity skill gap. So these are the complexities that we see, and we just have to be prepared, to face it. I mean, it's not going to reduce, it's not going to go down. And the reason is that we do a lot of technological things. Everything is now technology. And I like the fact that you mentioned that cybersecurity is a business conversation. It is not IT work. We try to narrow it down to IT. It goes beyond IT. It's going beyond that. It's a business conversation. So the outlook is good in terms of using technology, to work and do your things. But the downside is the complexity that we face. And we just have to find the strategies around it to survive in the industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kwame, for your submission. At this point, I think I'd like Kojo to also add on to it.
Sure. So to add to what Kwame said, of course, the sophistication level of cyber threat now is more than ever. With artificial intelligence, ransomware service, and all that. Data privacy issues are becoming more prominent. But in my view, I think the biggest shifts is the governance gap. If you look at the kind of threats and how fast they're evolving, you realize that the structures to manage them and to mitigate them is not moving at the same pace. It's much slower. So typically, you find yourself in a situation where the bad actors are usually ahead of regulation, ahead of governments, and so on and so forth. So yes, the threats will continue to exponentially increase as long as this governance gap is not addressed. And so, but there have been significant changes lately or recently, if you ask me. If you look at the context of Ghana, for instance, a lot of regulations have been introduced and picking up gradually. We hope this will help stem the tide, but the truth of the matter is that the malicious actors are always 10 steps ahead of the control or the mitigation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kojo. So from both submissions, right? It's like a data that I'm not even aware of, that there's a whole global outlook for cyber security and the threats in 2025. And it's more on the sophistication that we all want to go into, right? There was a recent time I saw, was it in China, where you can just fold your arm and you can pick data from someone else's phone. And it's amazing. So this sophistications and the governance gaps we can currently find ourselves in it's something that we really need to pay attention to. Thank you for that, Kay. But one of the ongoing challenges as well that organizations are facing in securing this digital environment is also the cybersecurity skills gap. Kojo touched on the government gaps, but when we come into the business side, the cybersecurity skills gap is something I would want us to talk about. Because with cyber threats becoming increasingly sophisticated, there is a pressing need for skills professionals to defend against them. So I would like to ask, okay, how can organizations address the persistent cybersecurity skills that we have currently? Kwame, I think I'll throw it to you first again.
Right. Yeah. So thank you. So this is a global challenge. All right. So if you look at the World Economic Forum again, the reports they release, the world needs 3.4 million cybersecurity experts to support today's global economy. So it's a global challenge, right? But for me, I think there are strategies that we can adapt to be able to mitigate some of these challenges. So for one is the vendor partnership, all right? So let's say if I'm going to buy typically a software for vulnerability and patch management, right? I have to partner with the vendor to provide that support. And the reason is that the gap is not there and how to survive. So one is embracing the vendor partnership, right? Two is to focus on automation. I think Kojo mentioned about machine learning and stuff like that. We need to focus on automations, right? Then the third one is investment in training and development. You can't stop training. I mean, the fact that you train people and they run away, that doesn't mean you have to stop training. So for me, it's a global challenge. And if we take consideration to some of these factors, right, of some of these steps, we'll be able to, stand and protect our industry and our organization ourselves. We can't stop training. We just have to keep training, be more innovative, go automation, embrace partnership with vendors to fill the gap, right? So for me, these are three things I would like to propose for organizations so that we'll be able to meet the skill gap. Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Kwame. Kojo, any add up to
Yes. So Kwame made very critical inputs there. I mean, cybersecurity is not cheap. So if you look at the tools, the resources, the knowledge that is required to even understand the issues, the volume of processes that are, and decisions that need to be taken in the value chain is quite challenging. And so I will add that for skill sets, most of the time we focus on the people. So you go to an organization, you look at those in charge of cybersecurity, and then we end the discussion there. But in my view, I mean, we should look at the bigger picture. Cybersecurity is everybody. And so if there are incentives around for people to take interest in cybersecurity, then I think you are taking a first important step to getting more people interested. Most of the time, it's made to look scary, and people feel that it's a no-go area, so nobody wants to venture. But the reality is that everybody can be a cybersecurity resource. And so I think there should be a deliberate incentive in getting people like or take likeness to that field. That's the first step. As part of strategy, I think it can not be emphasized enough that there must be a strategy around cyber resilience. And like I said, it doesn't come cheap. So most time you see that organizations are not willing to spend, but they want the results. How do you get the result without investing capital? So there must be a business case made to justify why certain capital expenditures should be made. And once that happens, it creates a platform for other ingredients to be brought to bear. Another way of upscaling in the space will be to adopt relevant security standards. So if you look at the standards we have around, there are quite a number of good ones. The NIST standard is there, ISO 27001, SOC 2, PCI DSS, and so on. OWASP is there, and all that. Now, these are processes that create an enabling environment for organizations to build capacity. And so one is to look at a strategy, the other is to also look at relevant standards and then provide incentives. Worst case scenario, we should look at security as a service. That's also an option. So where you don't have the people, where you don't have the resources to invest heavily, you can consider acquiring security as a service paid for, and that gives you a short-term leverage to get things running.
Yeah, Betty, just a quick one.
You want to add on? Okay.
Yeah, to what Kojo said. Yeah, it's very important that we look at also the incentive compensation package. You know, because you see, if people are well trained and they are not treated well, they leave. Just like Richard Branson, the owner of Virgin, said, he said, train your people so well enough that they can leave, but treat them such that they don't want to leave. So if you want to bridge the gap, in addition to all that we've said, I think we need to look at the compensation bit also, so that we train them and we treat them well, so they will stay with us. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Kwame, please stay on for me before you go. The mention of automation, right? If you can kindly elaborate a little bit on that for me.
Okay, all right. So let me be more practical here, right? So I'll go back using vulnerability and patch management. It's a technical, right? So don't worry, we'll break it down for you to understand. So if we purchase a solution to take care of vulnerability and patch management, in a typical old days, if I can use that word, right? You have like 3 or 4 people managing that solution. So they will install the solution. From time to time, somebody have to run the scanning to check the vulnerabilities of your environment. Then somebody have to provide another level of support where the vulnerabilities that have been identified, they resolve that. Now they have solutions that come like a full package. So you buy the solution, right? You have the partnership with the vendor. They automate the solution. So the software will do the vulnerability scanning, identify the vulnerabilities, and clean up the vulnerabilities. So in this case, you're reducing the people interface because you don't have so many cybersecurity people to do all these. And it's also a cost to us. So you automate the system run by itself. All right. So typically, maybe you need 2 or 3 people to manage that. In this case, you're using just one person with the system automated to do everything and just send you a report. So it reduces the amount of time, the amount of personnel, because it's expensive and we don't have them. And like I said, globally, the shortage. You need 3.4 million experts to support global economy, and they are not there. So what do? Your partnership with the vendor, you automate your system, and you're good to go. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for elaborating more on that. It's very
Betty,
clear now. Yes, Kojo.
yeah, so on the automation, actually, I see automation as a double-edged sword. Especially when you start looking at integration and all that. These are technologies that reduce the requirement for people. So headcount wise, automation helps. But the flip side is that automation can create inbuilt vulnerabilities to the process. So you've automated so much that you are unable to trail the process. You've basically handed over the knowledge to software. And so automation must be taken in context that to the extent of repetitive task, things that can always be predetermined, predefined, or have a definite pattern, yes. But automation will not work for everything. And so even with automation, whoever is managing that infrastructure will have to be able to make sense of it. And so
Of course, yeah.
back to the skill gap issue. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think it's making sense now, because as technology also continues to advance, so do the risks associated with it. So it's more like emerging technologies, while we are offering the potential, would also bring new vulnerabilities that the cyber criminals can exploit. So it's crucial for organizations to actually stay ahead of this risk, right? But what are the emerging technologies that poses the greatest risk, and how can these be mitigated? Kwame,
All right,
I'll start
thank
with
you. Right, sure. So I think we all know AI, artificial intelligence, and the associate component that comes with it, with the deep fake and all that. These are good solutions, to enable us do our job. At the same time, there are risks associated with all these technologies. So we look at AI as one of the critical things. I think last year we all had a deep fake, right, where they created, actually what they do, they simulated a voice and a picture in a video call, and they were able to instruct the CFO to push 25 million, right? So artificial intelligence, in as much as it's good, there are also downsides. It poses a lot of risk that we need to be more careful on that. IoT, Internet of Things, right? You travel out there, you sleep in a hotel where you control everything with a remote, the curtains, the lights, and all that. These are IoT things. Okay, it puts a lot of stress because the more you are connected, the more somebody will say you are naked on the internet, and you become more vulnerable. So artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and the almighty 5G. 5G comes with its own speed and the interesting thing all around the 5G, but there's also a risk. So how do we mitigate this? I think we just touched on the fact that we need to look at the process. But before you look at the process, you need to look at the people, because I believe that when the people are trained, they'll be able to master the process and use the technology. So we're looking at the people, process, technology. And once we take these 3 steps into consideration, I think we'll be able to mitigate some of the challenges that this emerging technology to us. Thank you.
Kwame, Kojo.
Yeah, I think Kwame touched on the key issues because really, if you look at the modules, it hasn't really changed. Ransomware is always ransomware. The end game is the same. But what is changing now is the way it's delivered. Hitherto, you have somebody breaking into your system, and all that. Now, ransomware is even available as a service. So you don't need to be an IT savvy. You just get a few guys, whichever country from China, Russia, what have you, pay them some money and tell them what the assignment is, and they go and carry it out for you. Or in fact, it's even automated. And so the challenge is that all these tactics that are known are re-emerging with different flavors, where even simple phishing, the way you're able to pick a phishing, now it doesn't work. You have phishing that it can be delivered even with the best, anti-phishing solution installed on your email gateway. So, that perspective of security operation management is changing. It's no longer, the big room with plenty screens, but it's rather the threat intel underlining some of these exploits. So both on the exploits and even the detection and prevention, everything is changing. So the AI is being used maliciously, but also is being used to combat it. Most tools now are adopting artificial intelligence to make sense of some activities. It's no longer the digital signature you have for the antivirus, where a process will be picked based on a known pattern. So I think the landscape is changing, and that could be a threat if the right investments is not being done. And so we think we are safe, and whereas really a lot of things have happened, and the technology gap that exists between this part of the world and the Western world is also not helping, because then we are usually a few years behind the pack. And so I would say that, from the threats, yes, Kwame touched on most of them, the deepfakes and all that. But internally also, we are not moving fast enough to be a par with what is happening globally. So you realize that breaches that could have been dealt with still go through, because a patch that was deployed 2 years ago is still not applied. And so things that happened 2 years ago, you end up experiencing it because you are behind the pack. And so to me, the threats is on one hand the evolving nature of the threat itself, but our response strategies, they are too slow, and that in itself is a threat, because then we are easily hit by some of this development. Mitigation wise, in my view, you just have to catch up, really catching up, and again it comes to the strategy, prioritizing what is important. So usually we look at the stack, and we feel that, okay, if you spend some resources on security within the one or the network at the expense of at the perimeter, that gives you a leverage. But the reality is that even with network security, you cannot do without AI. And so if you are going with the traditional controls, antivirus and all that, probably you are lagging behind. And now we are at the era of sensors being deployed to to give you that leverage, because the risk is ever present. You cannot afford to miss a patch, an update. So you have to always leverage on AI-enabled tools to cover yourself, really. So those are in my view, the ways we can mitigate the threats that are emerging.
Yeah, thank you for that, Kojo and Kwame. AI, we've mentioned AI countlessly, and it's actually making work and life a bit easier for us, right? And businesses also, I mean, when we talked about the sophistication that we all want to go into, right? Businesses are now under pressure, constant pressure to innovate. And I think Kwame and Kojo, you've also touched on automation as well. So whilst ensuring that robust security measures are in place, we also have to strike a balance.
Yeah.
But how can businesses strike the balance between innovation and security? Kojo, would you take that since Kwame has been starting?
Yeah, that's fine. So if you look at security, I think Kwame, in his earlier remarks, mentioned that cybersecurity has a business case. If you look at cyber as technology, you miss the point. Cyber is a business enabler. And so if you're looking at business or business enablement, I mean, cyber comes in strongly. But if your environment is safe, obviously, you can do more business. Customers are more comfortable using your systems, your product, because they know they are safe. And so striking a balance starts from the governance perspective, in my view. There must be a clear vision, priorities that define why something is being done. Most of the times, businesses go into some projects, and at the end you ask yourself, why was this project sponsored in the first place? You don't really understand why it was done. On another hand, there could be some case, but then probably with time, it's no longer relevant, and then it falls out. And so the governance should always, so business should always drive decisions. You shouldn't stifle business with technology by saying that because it's too risky, it's too dangerous, we don't want to go in there. It's a risk. So, but it should be a calculated risk. And to achieve that, there must be a systematization of risk management or risk assessments. So there should be a clear framework typically for new digital products that will evaluate the risk profile of the product throughout its life cycle, interaction points, that is integration points, inherent vulnerabilities, and so on and so forth. Once that is done, typically you're able to have a fair idea of what needs to be done to keep the environment safe. But if you go into a product development without carrying out that assessment, what happens is that you may come out with a nice product, but which poses so much risk to everybody, either through system breaches or data breach, and so at the end, once people feel that the environment is not safe, they don't buy into it. And so if it's done well, that is, if the assessments or the vulnerability management bit is done well, typically you're able to get a good balance, because then business is confident in the deployment of that product and selling it as well.
Thank you, Kojo. Kwame, if you can add on to that for us, please.
Yeah, sure. So let me just add to what Kudo have said. I mean, how do you build a beautiful house without gates? You can't. You don't build a beautiful house and leave the the house there. Somebody will say, leave the house ajar. No doors, no gates. No matter how beautiful the house is, anything can enter, right? So you cannot innovate without taking privacy, security, and risk assessment out of the game. I know businesses want to innovate, businesses want to adapt new technologies and run it. But it is so important, like I just said, that we do critical analysis about the innovation we want to adopt, innovation we want to take. And once we do that risk profile, right, we'll be able to find the loopholes and provide mitigations even before we start the project. So innovation should run by security. You don't innovate and leave security. So there are industry standards that we need to adopt. There are data protection, data privacy that we need to enforce, right? And once we take up these steps, I believe the organizations will enjoy their innovation because then they've taken into consideration all the security factors and they are building with security and end with security. So don't let us rush to build a beautiful house and leave the house open. Anything will enter. Thank you.
Thank you, Kwame. So what I got here, okay, which is also very relevant, is the seeing cyber as a business enabler.
Yeah.
Some organizations, because of the cost associated with it, they just don't want to even think about it or talk about it. They just want to build their product and move with it until it hits them. Okay. So, I mean, as individuals here on the call now, I know a lot of us may face these challenges at our workplaces where the CEOs or executives are not really in for putting in much work when it comes to cyber security. I mean, how would you help us to convince them to take this seriously? Kwame, I think you take this, then Kojo takes it after.
Right. So if there's a saying that if you think cybersecurity is expensive, wait to hack or you're attacked by ransomware, then you see how expensive it is. I think we need to present it as business case. We need to align with the business strategy. That's the only way top management understand. If we see cybersecurity as an IT, forget it, right? Tell them if your organizations are breached or hacked, there are critical things that you lose. One, you lose trust. Apart from the reputational damage to the organization, you lose trust of your customers, right? You lose money. So these are critical things that management should consider, right? So for me, it's not really about trying to convince them. It's about let them know the consequences. I was reading some stuff on the internet, looking at the cost of cybercrime. It's amazing that if you look at the projection for even 2025, it's projected to hit $10.5 trillion. It means the cost of cybercrime is now the third largest economy in the world. I mean, America is about 26.7 as at 2023 trillion. China is about 17.7 trillion as at 2023. Germany, who's supposed to be third, is 4.4 trillion as at 23. But if you look at the cost of cybercrime, it's 10.5 trillion by the end of 2025. So this is not a joke. So we need to present it to top management that, hey guys, these are how much we're going to lose if we don't take critical measures to build our cyber resilience. This is how much we're going to lose. So we need to make a business case and present to them, but not to leave it as IT work. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kwame. Kojo, when in your submission, you mentioned that the cyber criminals are even 10 times ahead of us. So it's even possible that even with all the cyber security measures that we put in place, they are thinking of ways to hack. I mean, Kwame has put in his submissions as well, and he's built a business case and taught us how to do it. What else can we add to it? So we can go and convince our CEOs and executives.
Yeah. So when you are doing your business case, it's not so much about necessarily scary, because that can also backfire, right? You don't want to come across as a doomsday prophet, but of course you want to engage, and I would say that engaging is key. Understand the business is important. So one way you sell your case is to let them know that you understand the business. Because when you understand the business, you're able to speak the language they want to hear. I mean, they are looking at turnover, profits, and all that, efficiency and all that. So the case will bring itself once you're able to engage and be at that level in terms of understanding the business. It's key that management sees you as a partner than somebody frustrating. Most of the times, we do certain things that don't help. For instance, you ask for a budget to acquire a system that is key, and then management say, okay, we don't have that capital now. And then that becomes like you are hounding them at every opportunity that, well, I told you we needed money. And so because there's no money, so you are putting it on their face every day. When you go that way, usually you don't gain the consensus or the trust or the support. Most of the time, it's possible to scale down the objectives. So probably you have a long-term goal. You want to get to a certain level, but you look at the journey as well. If you need to have 1 million USD cash outlay, you might spread it in chunks of say 200,000, and maybe that may be easier for management to approve than to say it's either I get 1 million USD or nothing. And so even in formulating our case, we want to use the journey approach. I will call it a journey approach. You don't want to just look at as is now, but you want to also look at where you are going, what can you do within the circumstances, what can you prioritize so that you become a partner and not a nuisance. And so, yeah, business case is important to convincing management, but engaging and speaking their language is more important in my view.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. I've put that point in my head now, and I'm sure everybody has also. It's very important. So not sounding like a nuisance, right? I think Kojo mentioned something about framework. I mean, sometimes you sound like a nuisance if you're always talking and there's nothing in place to, as a guide to follow up on this cybersecurity measures. So what are the policies or industry level changes necessary to fortify the cybersecurity efforts? And I think that will be my last question for today. Kojo, would you like to take that?
Okay. All right. So I think this is a very heterogeneous, in terms of applicability, is a question that doesn't cut across. And so we can take specific industries and maybe try to dissect or brainstorm. But generally speaking, there is one problem that stifles industry level engagement, and which is the competition. And so because we have different entities competing, we don't really see the need to work together. And so once you don't work together, what it means is that the little knowledge you have is stuck in there, you're in silo, you operate in silo. So an issue happens here, instead of passing it on for others to learn from it, you keep quiet, you don't share it, and then it hits other people also in the chain. So typically that is one big problem, information sharing as far as learning from others is concerned. So one way of beefing up this space clearly at industry level is to have specialized groups which are not subject to the competition. So we should be able both to have stakeholder engagement among competitors to build a common goal of enhancing the overall posture of the cyber security within the industry, for instance. And so that in some industries it works quite well. Others not quite well. Another way of looking at this problem is to say that, well, probably we want to go with best practice. Best practice, so if you're an enterprise, you don't go for non-enterprise license. So you go for an enterprise license that gives you the ability to manage your infrastructure, your resources at enterprise level. If you go with personal licenses, that means that if there's an update, you have to go around everybody, everybody's machine and be running update and patching and all that. So in setting up secure infrastructure, there are a lot of best practice hardening standards that, if conscientiously at industry level is followed, that will really bring down the risk exposure. And then probably, in my view, the most critical step will be to refocus on business enablement. So what I mean is that cybersecurity should be seen as a partner. In many industries, it's not. So when you go, you see that they are usually kept at the back. They are not seen as a partner in many areas. So bringing that level of maturity in the value addition process will really help see the function as a value addition function than a function that frustrates everybody. And of course, we keep it simple. In cybersecurity, I mean, you can say that you have achieved your objectives when everybody can speak about cybersecurity. If you're in an environment that only the so-called experts can talk about cybersecurity, that means that you are not seen as part of the business. But if the staff can talk about it, everybody sees the issues around phishing, around data privacy, around ransomware, then you can tell that you are building the awareness and you are creating a stronger environment. So these are areas, in my view, that can help fortify or enhance the cybersecurity posturing at industry level. Thank you.
Thank you, Kojo. Kwame.
Hi, yeah, so I would like to touch on the framework. So I believe there are international best practices and their frameworks, industry frameworks, as far as cybersecurity is concerned. So we have the NIST framework, which guides the steps to identify the maturity level of every industry. We have the ISO 27001 for information security. So these are industry best practices that if any organization adopt these practices, you can't go wrong. I mean, you go wrong where the people are not being taught about the policies in place, enforcing the awareness training. Could you say that you can only achieve the cybersecurity when the people within your organization know what some of these core technicalities are, like the phishing and all that. For me, I think cybersecurity is more like a culture. That's the level we need to get to, where we see cybersecurity as a culture. We embrace cybersecurity. So like Kojo is saying, if you call anybody, even the security man, the cleaner, and you ask about what is social engineering, we should be able to tell you what social engineering is. And you can achieve all this by following the best practices, the international frameworks. When you follow that, right, then you'll be able to achieve the objective that we want to achieve. So for me, cybersecurity, we need to see it more like a culture, right, where we learn the culture and we become like the culture and we live by the culture. So it's more awareness, all right? Even we have all these standards, if you don't train them, if you don't create the awareness, you don't achieve anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Kwame and Kojo. I would just like to summarize briefly what we've said, and then you summarize the whole discussion for us again, okay? So cybersecurity, from what I've picked, is a business center, is a partner to the business and not a nuisance to the business, right? We have to engage. We have to engage, and we need to understand the business to be able to help in combating all these cyber hacks, okay? But in all this, we have to see cybersecurity as a culture, because that's the only way we can win against the cyber criminals. If something should happen in your organization or your personal life, maybe you've been hacked in a certain way, don't just keep it to yourself. Share, because in sharing, you are able to mitigate the risk of someone else also getting hacked. So share and let people know what has happened, and that alone also helps in the mitigation. Then I think Kojo mentioned the stakeholder groups for discussion. So you are always staying ahead of the risk in the environment we find ourselves. We focus on business enablement. At the end of the day, we need to build trust. That is what we need, right? Because if you are being hacked every day as an organization, your trust is lost, from what Kwame said. You also lose the reputational image. Okay, so you go and you want to do business, and no one wants to do business with you because of what you stand for, and you lose money, and that is why you are in business, right? So if you are losing money, then you are not in business. So this tells us how important cybersecurity is, and how relevant it is to get money, you see. So in 2025, let's bear this in mind and take it, wear it as an armor, okay? See it as a culture and live it. We have 4 minutes before we wrap up, but I would last words from my guest speakers for today. It's very difficult getting them, so right now that I've gotten them, I think we have to get everything from you, right? And I hope to see you the next webinar. I'll be inviting you for other webinars because there's a lot to talk about, but we had to, just summarize it today. So before we leave, Kwame, I'll take your last words.
Right, thank you. So before I make my final comments, I also want to say that there's a cybersecurity authority in Ghana, under the leadership of Dr. Nchibo Siakun. Dr. Nchibo Siakun, we have established a cybersecurity in Ghana, where if you have any issue, any challenges, you can also report to the cybersecurity office. Having said that, I think we need to embrace cybersecurity in as much as we are innovating and we are adopting new technology. We need to see cybersecurity as part of life, because cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you. It's everyone's responsibility. And we now know where to go to when we have issues.
Right, sure.
Thank you for that. Kojo, your final words to us, please.
Well, I think, the experience has been good. The engagement was good. We really, there's no one fits all approach to cybersecurity. You come to appreciate that the context will always determine what matters or what is important. And so you realize that if you are to drive a strong culture of cybersecurity, it starts from you and I, our personal life, how we go about our data management, how we handle our data, that is our personal data, how we handle our usage of systems, passwords, pins, all this built into a bigger culture, cyber culture. So I would just encourage all of us to continue applying some of these controls. I call them controls because really they are controls. How we carry ourselves around, how we interact, how much information do we let out. These are all things that have a bearing on our exposure. So the least, the better. You don't need to be all over there. Our use of social media and all that. These are entry points, how we get easily hacked. And so in our personal space, let's be security conscious and aware because the risk is real. The risk is real. And so once we do that, it becomes easier to build on and build a stronger, resilient society at large, which is cyber security aware. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kojo. Thank you, Kwame, for making time to join us today and sharing insights. We've learned a lot. And from today, we are carrying a lot with us for the year 2025. No one on this call or no, you shouldn't be hacked. I mean, after hearing this, we should be conscious of our environment and in what we do in the space of digitization, AI, everything. Okay, so let's be conscious of it. We are so grateful for this. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be ending, and this recording, okay, will be shared on our social media handles. So if you wanted a friend to join, you listened and you want to share, you want someone to hear about it, please go to our social media handles and then share the link to your friends. We have this webinars every month on the second Tuesday of the month. We did it on the Friday because of other inconveniences, right? So we had to do it today. But once you sign up and you subscribe, you will get notification on when our next webinar will be held and the topics that will be held. And there's a lot of engagement out there as well. So just subscribe, like, and we'll stay connected. So see you again next time. Thank you once again, Kojo and Kwame. We'll see you all in the next webinar. Thank you for joining us.